Now we have a Fox News alert. We want to go to Fox News correspondent Will Carr. He's in Anaheim, California, with developing protests outside of a Trump event. Will?
Hey guys, in less than 15 minutes, this situation has gotten quite volatile. Violence has broken out. Basically, all of these members of law enforcement have been pushing the protesters that we saw at the convention center about 2 or 3 blocks to our south earlier down this street here. You can see they pushed back, but the cops will come up, they'll edge up, and then they will grab somebody. In the last 5 minutes, we've seen 7 or 8 arrests. At the same time, the protesters have been throwing huge rocks at the officers. I mean, rocks as big as my hand here. They've also been lighting things on fire. They were lighting shirts. They lit a couple of trash cans back there behind us on fire. And what we've been seeing is these front lines are inching up close to the protesters. You've got guys over here. They have their faces covered. They've been getting arrested. Guys, we'll continue to keep a close eye out here. Back to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Will. KG's now going to start us with some Q&A around this protest.
Okay. Hey, well, yes, Kimberly. So did they, in fact, come to an extra level of preparation because of the protest that happened in Albuquerque last night? So to have extra police today?
Can you say that one more time?
Did they provide extra police force protection out there today in light of what transpired yesterday in Albuquerque, New Mexico?
The police department told us that they did not change their plan because of what happened in Albuquerque. They said that they've known that this rally was going to go on for the past 5 days. So what they did is they had that entire week to plan for this. Just a couple of weeks ago here in Orange County, we had some other violence at a Trump rally. So they said that they were prepared. Now, the one thing I'll say is that these protesters were 2 or 3 blocks down, not moving, but these officers pushed them back on this street. And this street actually had traffic just within the past couple of minutes. The protesters got pushed into that traffic. They started kicking cars. They started throwing rocks, trying to break windows on some of the cars. And then they've continued to get pushed back. So right now it's momentarily calm, but within the last 10 or 15 minutes, it definitely, as I mentioned, has been volatile, guys.
All right, Will, I'm going to make a quick observation. Anaheim 1, Albuquerque, nothing. This is clearly a better way to handle these protesters. Arrest them, push them back, and do it with volume, and do it with a lot of gear. You noticed some people had facial masks on. They want to hide their identity. Cowards. And the final thought, you said that these people, the cops knew about this for 5 days. Do you see any pre-made signs? Do you see, is there any indication on who organized this protest?
Well, there was probably about 50 to 75 protesters to start with. I'd say there was roughly a dozen who had their faces covered, which has become quite typical with these rallies. And those are the ones who kept going up to these lines, really trying to incite the officers to do something. And those are the ones, one by one, as I mentioned, roughly between 7 and 10 have been arrested in the last 5 to 10 minutes, guys.
Will, it's Dana Perino. I'm just curious, at what time does this rally start, and will it be light out when it finishes?
Well, so this started, the protesters started when the Trump rally started, which was at noon local here. They started showing up a little bit earlier. They got stronger. They really didn't have any Trump supporters to yell at, so there were some street preachers. They got into a verbal sparring session. Then the street preachers left, and then they turned their anger towards law enforcement out here. And that's how we got to this situation that we're in now. Law enforcement started pushing them back. They started saying on loudspeakers on the helicopter above us that this was an unlawful protest, and anybody who remained here in the streets, I mean, this is a public street, as I mentioned. Cars and traffic were going along here just a matter of minutes ago. They continue to say anybody in these streets are going to be arrested, and so far we have seen some evidence of that, Dana.
Good.
Greg?
Yeah, well, I'm always curious, where do these rocks come from? Like, they're in basically on a highway. Do they bring them with them? Do they pick them up?
Along the sides of the streets here, there's some pretty big rocks that they've been picking up. And like I said, I mean, some were the size of grapefruits. One guy threw some, and that led to his arrest. But it came right in front of the horses here. And a rock that big, if it hits anybody, especially in the head, that is quite potentially quite dangerous, Greg.
Well, bowling again. The protest last night, clearly there are people with Mexican flags. They're protesting the immigration policy of Donald Trump. Is there a concise topic, is it also immigration?
Message.
A message at the heart of their protest, or is this just people showing up and creating havoc?
No, I would say immigration definitely had some people fired up, but for the most part, we saw a bunch of looky-loos coming in, the guys with the masks, and you can see again, they were pushing us north on the street here. The guys with the masks didn't really seem to come for any specific reason, no issue on policy that's upset them. They really seemed to come more because they wanted to stir things up with law enforcement, and some now are at least going to spend a little bit of time behind bars.
To that question, Will, do we have any idea around how many arrests have been made? Are we talking a handful, or have you seen any types of, significant quantity?
I can only tell you guys what we've seen. I'm going to say, here you go. They're getting a guy right here. They're chasing. This is what they've been doing. They race out from the line, and then they go and get one. Seems they stopped here for a second. They're wrapping on behind the line. What they do is, this number of officers here, is they pick out single individuals. They race up from behind the line, try to grab them, then take them back. Like I said, and it was perfect for your question, we've seen probably 7, 8 times where they actually got people. These officers right there, not able to arrest anybody, but they're absolutely singling out the protesters out here, trying to get them off the streets.
Thank you, Will.
Will, so what's interesting is they really seem like they are well prepared, but to me, really, it's no surprise because the Anaheim PD, having worked as a prosecutor in Los Angeles, they're outstanding police department. I think this is an example of how it can and should be done, as Eric pointed out moments ago. Are we seeing any of the command brass out there from the police department? Anybody of senior authority that appears to be calling the shots and coordinating these efforts?
Not that I can visually see, but they do have a helicopter in the air. They're monitoring this from both the ground and the air. And to be frank with you, I don't know if you guys have one of those helicopter shots, but I can't see what's going on behind this line. But I would roughly estimate that they have between 200 and 300 officers out here. So they have quite a mix of officers, not only on the ground. You can see here it looks like they may be, again, looking for the next protester they want to take out, but also they have dozens and dozens of mounted officers here trying to take care of the situation.
It's a big show of force to have that many out, which is good, which you need.
Huge amount of resources to
Absolutely.
Hey, Will, I don't know if we're even supposed to be doing this, but is there a chance to talk to one of these protesters and ask them what their grievance is?
I can ask them.
Yeah. He's like,
that could get
yeah. He was watching last night with Jonathan.
We're pushing back, guys. We're pushing back.
Where do you think where are they trying to get people to go? Like, how far do they want them to get away?
That's a good question, because we're not sure. They just keep pushing them back into moving traffic. You can see there's a car
Wow.
just right here. And that's part of the plan that, I'm not going to second guess law enforcement. They have obviously had a plan and had a plan in place for days here. But it seems that this has just continued to push into ongoing traffic. And like I mentioned, right before we came out in live, the protesters then started trying to attack some of the cars that were in traffic out here. So the officers swept up, got some of those protesters, but I'm not exactly sure that went according to plan as to what they were going to do when violence broke out here.
Hey, Will, it's Greg. I have a question about, can you figure out the ratio of people who are there just holding cameras and watching and actual protesters? I mean, could it be that there's like 30 protesters and everybody else is just there for a show?
Yeah, Greg, that's a good question. So earlier today, there was a section of time where there was probably one Trump supporter, one Trump protester screaming at each other. And I have to say, I posted a picture on my Twitter account. There was 30-plus members of the media surrounding that. It really kind of stood out to me. But through the course of the day, the number of protesters have grown. The number of media has stayed the same. And then you just have those handful of guys, those handful of deviants who just want to push all the way up to the officers, and it's really, you get the sense that they really came here wanting to get arrested or at least to stir up some kind of violent situation before they try to go home at some point, Greg.
So, Will, do we see kind of the level of violence and escalation that we observed last night in Albuquerque, New Mexico, because they were throwing things that were lit on fire at the police horses. They were hurling rocks at the cops, even ones that didn't have the protection on. They even threw a rock at Jonathan Hunt when he was trying to report for us last night.
It's definitely been a little more sporadic than what we saw in Albuquerque, but in various moments there have been parts of violence. I mentioned the rocks that they've thrown. I've seen a number of items that they've lit on fire, and like I said, they were kicking cars, trying to break the windshields and the side windows on some of the cars that we saw. So not as much and congruent as what we saw last night in New Mexico, but certainly there has been that kind of criminal element there.
Will, Ebony, again, are you able to hear any of the protesters in terms of chants or things they're saying? I understand they don't have a real clear, concise political message, but anything that you're able to hear on the ground that they're actually saying or chanting?
Yeah, Ebony, I'll tell you, some of the things I certainly can't say on cable news and keep my job, but most are anti-Trump sentiments, very vitriolic. So are the signs and the chants that we've heard, a lot of cuss words, and just a lot of anger from the people that we've encountered. Ebony.
Thank you.